Hello friends! Hi, it's Jen, or Jenny, as some of you might know me. So if you don't know who I am, 3 years ago I made a video about how I became a concept artist and a little bit about my experience getting into Sheridan College, which is an animation school in Ontario. Got a lot of people messaging me after that, and I made a few friends from it, and I was happy to help a few young people who were aspiring to get into the animation industry, so I'm really glad that I made that video. I'm really glad I got to meet some of you. And so a lot has happened since that video. It's only been 3 years, but it feels like I've lived several lifetimes, honestly. So keep watching and I will tell you everything that happened. So when I made that first video, I was at a small studio in St. Catharines. It was my first job. I got hired at the industry day at Sheridan, which is when a lot of studios come and they watch your final film, your thesis project, and some of them even submit offers if they want to hire you, which is great, especially if you want to work at a studio and you want to work in the animation industry and, hopefully you move your way up, etc. So it's great, and you don't have to kind of go out on your own and cold call studios. It's a really important day for a lot of new grads. So I was really lucky to have gotten an offer from this studio. So I feel like I need a bit of a disclaimer because in that video, I was really, really happy to have my first job, and you have to understand, I was coming from making nothing to all of a sudden having a regular income, and that was really life-changing for me. But of course, when you're just starting out, comparatively, you don't actually make that much money. So looking back at it now, I really wasn't making very much, even though I was really, really proud at the time. So it's about perspective, right? So, and I don't mean to say this in the way that you should expect to make 6 figures right out the gate because you're a student. Obviously you're going to be making starting wages when you first start out, and you kind of have to work your way up. That's just how it is, right? So I was really happy. I don't fault myself for that, but in the years following that, it was really, really difficult for me to kind of save up any kind of money because it was so low. The pay was so low that I was sort of living paycheck to paycheck. And yes, it was great, because I was coming from zero, so anything is better than zero, right? But at the same time, I had a lot of student debt from Sheridan. Had about 40K, a little bit less than 40K in debt. And, I had credit card bills, living expenses, stuff like that. So it's starting to pile up, and I was working a lot. It wasn't exactly really exciting work. It was kind of just the bare minimum what they would give you since you don't have that much experience. There's no way you're going to become a lead character designer right when you graduate. So I was doing concept art stuff for a kids show. So kids shows, they're probably not what you're used to doing in school. They're a little several levels below, I guess, what you're used to challenging yourself with in school. In school you get to make really cool character designs, I don't know, maybe a gargoyle or a dragon or something like that. But with kids shows, it's a lot more simplified and kid friendly, obviously. So maybe you're like me, and back then I really wanted to be a concept artist for Blizzard or Riot, and I really liked those cool edgy sort of styles, and that's where I wanted my career to go. So it was kind of oh, okay, I'm just starting, so I can't really complain that much, but it was a little bit tedious for me, I guess, at the beginning. So there was that. Also, it was really far. The studio was really far from where I lived. It was in St. Catharines, and I was living in Oakville. I don't know how to explain that to you if you don't live in Ontario, but it's far, and I had to carpool with somebody every day, and I ended up only going in part of the week, which meant I got paid even less just because the commute was so long. And like, if I paid for the train or whatever, it would like, I was already making so little that it would like negate some of my pay. So it was like almost not even worth it. Not to say it was all bad. Like, I did make some friends, and I was able to help my other friend who was in my year get a job as well. So I got to see her, and that was really nice. And I made fast friends with my my coworker who I was carpooling with. She was really awesome. So it wasn't all bad, and we had lunch, and I made a friend there who I'm still friends with to this day. So it was good. It was a good experience for the beginning, but I was struggling a little bit financially. And I was honestly starting to like wonder like what my future would be like, because my skill level was good enough to get hired, but it wasn't like people were coming at me with job offers, so to speak. And I knew I had to improve. I wanted to improve. But I also felt like I was lacking a little bit of passion. And I had started to feel this towards the end of my degree as well. But I had already come so far, and I had fought so hard to get into that program that I didn't really think about it too hard. So fast forward, we meaning me and my now fiance, who was my boyfriend at the time, John Lamb, we went to Taffy, which is like an industry event where you go and show your portfolio to local studios, and they evaluate you. Sometimes they give you a job offer, not on the spot usually, but they keep your contact info, etc. And it's just like a good industry networking event. Anyways, we went there, and John got offered a job at Titmouse, which is a really well-known studio in Vancouver. And he was a big fan of their work and had been wanting to work for them for a while. And he was working at ARC, which doesn't exist anymore, and it's now called Jam-Filled. Anyways, so yeah, we decided to move to Vancouver because of this opportunity, and I was really happy for him. I was a little bit worried about myself, but I didn't want to get in the way of his big job offer. And I was like, well, there's lots of studios in Vancouver, so I'm sure I can find something. Well, it was very tough for me when I arrived in Vancouver. John started working immediately at Titmouse. We found a place to rent without actually being there to look at places, so we ended up with a kind of a bad place. Like, it was a basement. It was really, really cold, which is unusual because Vancouver has really good weather, but the basement was freezing, and I got sick a lot because I just couldn't stay warm. And I was really, really depressed. I don't get depression very often, but this was next level. Okay, guys, I don't want to sugarcoat this. I was broke because I had no job, and I was applying at a time when nobody was hiring. So my self-esteem was in the gutter. I felt like my art was just absolute shit. I was like, what am I doing? I was just pretty lost, and I gained some weight, and I continued to gain some weight, and it was not a good time. It was not a good time. So it didn't last like years or anything like that, but it did last quite a good amount of time for me to feel like absolute crap. But luckily, because of my friend Jill, thanks Jill, she helped me get a job at a local studio called Rainmaker, which is now called Mainframe. And I was super excited. I ended up getting paid, I got paid less. I got paid less than my first job, but at that point I was so desperate. I was like, I don't even care. I don't want to stay at home crying all day, so, I'm going to take it, whatever it is. I even tried to negotiate with them. I tried to bump it up a couple just to, like, match my last one, and they wouldn't. So, you know, I should make another video about budgets in Canadian animation. But anyways, I digress. So I went there. I was doing layout. I wasn't a concept artist, but at this point, I just didn't give a shit. I was like, I'll do it. So it was for a pretty cute project. I don't think it ever aired. It was for a pilot. But anyways, it was like my first time doing layout, so I didn't really know like all the technical stuff. I just knew how to draw like things in perspective and, you know, basic stuff like that, like the drawing stuff. But there was a lot of technical stuff with layout that I didn't know. Like, how do I explain this? Like layering things and file naming things. Yeah, there was just a lot of things that had very little to do with drawing. So if you're thinking about getting into layout, just be warned, it's a very technical job. You're not designing backgrounds. Most of the time, you're actually just taking elements from a key background illustration and redrawing them, resizing them, making sure they're in perspective, etc. You basically don't draw. So, but it's a job. It's a job in the animation industry, and yeah, that's pretty much, that was my criteria at the time. So, you know, the team was very small. It was very small. I think it was 5 people, including myself. And it was one of many projects the studio was working on, so it wasn't a very big one. We didn't have a very big staff or a very big budget, but luckily my lead was very nice and she taught me a lot, and she was really patient even though I was like a complete dumbass and I had talked a big game in the interview, but I really didn't know anything about layout. So I think she kind of knew, even though like she still hired me. I think they just really needed somebody, so you know. Again, I was like living paycheck to paycheck. Basically all my money went to paying off bills. And I pretty much didn't spend any money on myself, like ever. So yeah, it wasn't fun, but at least I was out of the house and I wasn't like, you know, at home thinking that I was garbage at art and no one would ever hire me. Eventually, that project ended and I was able to get a referral from one of my teammates who had been in the industry a very long time, so she was a very strong referral, to another studio, which I feel like I can't name because I'm about to say some shit about it. So I'm not gonna say what studio it was, but it was a big studio. And it was the biggest one to date that had offered me a job, and they didn't interview me because I had come on such a strong referral from my friend who I'd met at Rainmaker. She was really well known by them. I think she'd worked with them before, so they were just like, oh yeah, it's coming from her, then just hire this girl. She doesn't need an interview. And I was like, oh, that's good. But if they had interviewed me, they would have known that I had just started doing layout and I didn't really have that much experience. I wasn't a pro. I could draw well, but in terms of the technical requirements for layout, I was still pretty much a noob. So I had like a bit of a break in between the gigs, so we went to Disneyland. It was a good time. John paid for everything because I was really, really poor, but I was okay because, you know, I knew I had a job waiting for me. So started this job. It was a really, really big project, big team, really well-known animation. Probably most of you have seen it. It's I don't want to say too much, but yeah, anyways, people who know me know what it was. So I was really like proud that I got hired to work on this. A lot of people accepted really low rates because it was such a well-known show and it would help your career. So, you know, we were all really excited to be there. And then everything went to shit. So basically what happened was, remember I told you I was living in a basement and I was really cold and I got sick a lot? So I got sick with something, I don't even know what it was this day. It was like the flu. Even though that year I got my flu shot, and I don't usually get the flu shot because I'm like, I'm healthy, I'll be fine. But this year I did. And that is the year that I got the flu, ironically, right? Dumb. Anyways, I got the flu and it was really bad. Like, I don't get sick very often, but this one was a doozy, okay? It was like, COVID wasn't around yet, but man, I feel like it would have been similar to what COVID was. It was freaking awful. Okay, I had chills and it just wouldn't go away. It was like 2 weeks of just feeling miserable, like bedridden, fever. And I lost my voice. I couldn't talk. It was awful. And I took so many meds just to manage the symptoms, and it was really, really difficult on my body. I actually went into work because I was afraid that people would think I was skipping intentionally because I was away for, I think, 2 weeks. But I came in and I was like really sick, and like people could tell, obviously, because I lost my voice and I could barely speak. When I finally got over it and I came back, something in my lead changed. His demeanor towards me changed. He started being kind of like suspicious of me in really strange ways. Like, I think he got it in his head that I was a slacker and that I was trying to get out of doing work. Don't know why. But yeah, so it started like a trend where he would pass behind my desk and he would like, I could feel him looking at me and like judging what I was doing on my computer. So I started to get like really paranoid. And eventually he took me into a room. God, this is awful reliving this. It's like really traumatic for me. I still have nightmares about this to this day. But he took me into a room with a bunch of other people who I had never spoken to before, and he pulled out a notebook. Okay? A notebook full of things that he didn't like about me, or things that he had noticed that I was doing that he didn't like. And he started reading off this notebook in front of these people. There was like HR, there was like someone from animation who I don't ever talk to. They're like not even the same department. And it was humiliating, okay? It was truly, truly awful. To be honest, I've kind of blocked out some of it, so I can't really give you details because it was just that awful. But after that day, I started having panic attacks. I've never had panic attacks in my life. I had to Google what it was because I was just like, I had come back from lunch and I was about to go back up to the studio, and I was just standing in an alleyway outside the building, just like hyperventilating, and like there were like spots in my vision and things started like kind of glowing. And I was just like, what the fuck is happening? And like I really don't want to go back in right now because I'm really scared. And yeah, sorry, give me a minute. So anyway, so the things that he addressed were, they were small things. They were small things, but for some reason, like, you know, when you're looking for something in somebody to prove a theory that you have, you find things, right? So I kind of think that's what it was. Like, maybe I had forgotten to turn on a layer. It's very easy to just turn it back on, right? If you're an art lead and you're just like looking over stuff, you just turn it back on and you submit it. End of story, right? But he would make this a point that I was like not paying attention, or I was lazy, or I had been going back and forth with him on this rough, which was ridiculous because, you know, now that I have more experience and I can look back, he was incredibly nitpicky. Like it was actually a waste of his time to be that nitpicky with me. But he would go over and over this rough with me, and I was like, okay, that's fine. He really wants to like make sure that it's right. So, you know, he was so nitpicky that I felt like I had to ask him for everything because like he would always find fault with something that I did. So when this thing finally got approved and I cleaned it up and I submitted it, he called me over to his desk and he asked me if I deleted the rough sketch, even though he had already approved it and I had already cleaned it. And I was like, yeah, I deleted the rough. Just because I was trying to clean up, these backgrounds, they were really, really detailed and they had a lot of layers. So I just deleted things that I didn't need anymore. So I deleted the rough. That's usually what I do. I don't do that anymore. Let me tell you, I don't do that anymore. But I deleted the rough and I didn't think it was a big deal because he'd already approved it. And he was so angry at me. He was shaking. I'm not even exaggerating. He was shaking. His voice was raised. I literally thought, like, what the f***? This guy was, like, livid, okay, that I had deleted a rough drawing that he'd approved. Now, if you don't have any experience in the industry, this is not normal. This guy had serious anger management problems. And that was just, like, one instance, okay? After that, I was really, really scared for like, I think a couple weeks. I was the last one to leave. I didn't want to leave before anyone else. I had been trying to take kickboxing classes so that I could lose some of the weight that I'd gained from my depression episode, but I missed all of those because I was so afraid of this guy judging me. So I was the last to leave and the first one to arrive. I had post-it notes all over my desk of notes from people who gave me advice so that I could improve. I asked my coworkers at lunch. I was like dead set on improving and being perfect. And in the end, they still fired me. Yep. They brought me into a room one day. This HR person came over to my desk. Hey Jen, could you come with me? I went into a room. There was this animation guy, not part of my department again, but he gave me like this really condescending speech about like,
I think you need to think about what you really want. Do you really want this?
And I actually laughed in the meeting because it was just so absurd because I had gone through so much shit. Like I couldn't even take a break without this animation guy. I don't know who he was, but I guess my lead had talked a lot of stuff about me to him, so he already like judged me without knowing me. But even when I was just taking like a break, like a breather, because I was so freaking stressed in the lunchroom, he would see me and he would be like,
"Hey Jen,"
like in a really like, I see what you're doing, you should be working. And I was just like, what the heck? So he was the one who was there when they fired me, not even my lead. My lead wasn't even there. Nope. So they were like, yeah, so we are terminating your contract. And it was like, I don't remember what they said. I was just like all a blur. I just kind of like blacked out. But I collected my stuff and yeah, I left. They escorted me out. It was humiliating. And it just so happens that was the day before John and I were going to move out of that basement to a condo that was closer to my work, so that my commute wouldn't be as long. The irony, right? Okay. It's been a while since I told that story. It was a very important learning experience for me because it taught me what I didn't want. Even though that animation guy was a dick, and he was really condescending, he was right, actually, in a way. I didn't want to do that. Yeah. I really didn't want to do layout, and it kind of showed me that I needed to work harder if I wanted to get out of that kind of low-paying, people don't give a shit about you, you're disposable category, right? Before this, John and I had begun to develop a IP, an intellectual property called Super Punchy Girl. Can I say that? I can say that. We've already announced it. Anyways, we were in the process of developing that since Oakville, and I remember when I came home that day after I'd been fired, he was like, well, Bex will always be there for you. And that was our main character. And I cried. I cried my eyes out. I hadn't cried up until then because I think I was still in shock. But man, when he said that, it just like struck me like it doesn't matter what these companies say about me or what these people, they're just people who work at a company. However they treat you, you know, they can never take away your autonomy as an artist, your brand, your ideas. Those belong to you no matter what. Okay, remember that. That's important. If you're young and you're developing your own thing, keep it. Don't let that die. That's very, very important. Okay, I'm gonna get back to that. Anyway, so I took some time off. John was like supporting me again. I had a little bit of savings, but for the most part, he was like, I was on his back for a long time. I still owe him, honestly. I wouldn't be where I am today without him. He was the one, after a few months, who suggested that I try for this new layout position at Titmouse. Now, he had since left Titmouse for Skybound, and he still had connections at Titmouse. So he found out they were hiring for layout, and he was like, hey, why don't you just apply to this job? And, you know, I was still kind of like, I don't know, I don't want to go back to layout, I don't want to repeat the whole thing again. And he was like, trust me, it's not going to be the same. They're really, really good over there. Just give it a try, right? And I was like, I do need to, like, you know, start earning some income, because I was still running Peachy Shop at the time, but I wasn't like doing that spectacularly. You know, like I said, all my money was going towards my bills, so I was like, okay, I'll apply. And I got the job. And it was awesome. I am really glad that I did not leave the industry at that point after being fired. But at Titmouse, I kind of like found my footing again. I'm really grateful to Titmouse for allowing me to grow. They gave me a raise, so I wasn't like dirt poor again, and people were really nice. The project was fun. It was really fun. Actually, it's out on Netflix. My first project that I worked on Titmouse was Archibald. Yeah, it was just so much fun. I got to draw again. It was really easy and fun style. Like, people were really laid back. My lead was super laid back. He was like the complete opposite of my last lead, honestly. He was like, oh yeah, that's fine, don't worry about it. Like, he literally did not care, and like, he just wanted to go rock climbing or something. Like, he was really cool. So, you know, I was like ultra paranoid. Like, I had learned that from my last gig. So I was like double, triple checking, making sure I never made any mistakes. But honestly, like, yeah, I kind of overdid it because, well, of my experience. But he was super chill. And then the next project I got moved on to, I was so excited, guys. It was Star Trek Lower Decks. I'm wearing the shirt right now. My crew shirt. I was so happy to be on that show because I'm a huge Trekkie, huge nerd, and yeah, it was like, finally, you know, we had really talented people on my team, and I was like, I felt so good that I could work next to them and call myself a part of their team. I was really proud, and it was a good way to end my relationship with the animation industry. Actually, during that time, while I was at Titmouse, we signed a contract with Skybound to get our IP made into a comic book, which was insane. I still can't believe we did that to this day. We worked really hard on it, but yeah, it paid off in the end. So if you have a personal project, don't give up on it. It's worth it. I left Titmouse with a good conscience. And then, actually, I left towards the end. That was when the pandemic hit. So, yeah. So we all started working from home, and I finished the rest of my contract from home. After that, I launched a Kickstarter for something called an ETA jacket. which is a jacket with a clear pocket in the back that allows you to decorate it without having to worry about things falling off and you losing them. Anyways, so it was something that I came up with on my Christmas break, and I had been developing for a few months, getting samples made and working with a manufacturer and stuff like that, and preparing the campaign and the art, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so it launched summer of 2020. And it blew up. It did way better than I was anticipating, which was both extremely exciting and extremely terrifying. You might think, oh, 100K. Okay, it ended up being 180K. Oh, 180K, like, all your problems are solved. Well, no, because I was not expecting that, and my stuff was not priced to handle that volume. I did not think about shipping that amount of stuff by myself, so I had to hire a warehouse, and I did not think about customs when you're importing large quantities like that. Anyways, there was a lot of things that I had not considered, including taxes. Taxes was another thing. But on the bright side, it made me realize I did not want to go back to animation. So it allowed me to leave my previously desperate state of constantly worrying about whether a studio would hire me, if I was good enough, blah, blah, blah. And it allowed me to now fully rely on my store, Peachy Shop, to survive on, which was my goal for a very, very long time. I just didn't expect it to happen like that. So it happened, and I'm glad that it did. I encourage you to examine why you are taking the degree that you are, pursuing the career path that you are. If it's in art, why? Is it just to prove that you are good enough? That your art is good enough? That you can do it despite people telling you no? Because that was kind of my reason. And when I got what I wanted, I realized that it wasn't what I wanted. So I think the pandemic made people reevaluate a lot of things, and this was mine. I realized that I actually didn't want to work in the animation industry after I figured out what it was exactly. Even though I was in layout for most of it, even doing character design didn't really appeal to me. I did actually some freelance work for character design, and I was like, eh. I wanted to go out on my own. I had a feeling that, like, I could make things that the general public would like, and I wanted to create those things and get direct feedback, because when you work on a show, you're just a name in the credits and people don't necessarily know you, and you have to follow a style of the show that isn't yours, so you're kind of faceless as an artistic brand. And I realized that my whole journey at Sheridan was just like, I didn't like the idea of giving up. I still don't. But it kind of blinded me to the fact that it wasn't what I really wanted. The fact that I had to apply 3 times, right? It just kind of further told me that, you just have to work harder. Not, do you really want this? I didn't like people telling me, do you really want this? Like, no, what are you talking about? Yes, I do want it. So I was very stubborn, and it took me a long time to realize that I was just doing it to prove that I could, not because I actually wanted it. So that was a learning experience, but, if I had to go back and do it again, I would do it the same way. I learned so much. But I think people should still reevaluate why you're doing the things that you're doing. During the pandemic, after my Kickstarter, and I realized I didn't have to work for a while, I also realized I didn't want to sit at home and just work on my shop all day. And I thought, what would I be doing if I didn't have to work at a studio to pay my bills? And you know what? Acting. Acting was something I had wanted to do since I was in high school. I went to acting classes in Montreal. I had always been involved in theater. Didn't always get cast, but I still wanted to be involved. And so I was like, I'm gonna do acting. I went to classes online during the pandemic, so I could just learn from the comfort of my home. I took in as much as I could. I wrote my own monologue. I performed it on self-tape. I submitted it to a bunch of agencies, and I got an agent. He's a great guy. I love him to bits. He has done so much for me. He really believes in me. And to this date, I've booked about 3 jobs, and I started in like September 2020. It's kind of related to animation in the way that it's still storytelling, but this time you get to be a part of the story. You get to be in it. You get to be a character, and I think that's so much fun. It's like character design, but with your body and your face. I think that's so much fun. I just love being involved. I love film. Obviously, it's still kind of related to animation. And last but not least, John has been doing super, super well. He got hired at Nickelodeon, and then he got hired at Blizzard, and now he is about to start working full-time for Riot Games, which was one of my dream jobs, which is no longer anymore, but that's still cool. I get to live vicariously through him. And we are moving to LA next year, January, in like 6 months. I still can't believe that all this happened in 3 years, but I want to share this journey with you, and I really want to. I've talked with John, so he'll be doing some videos with me too. So yeah, if you have any questions, burning questions that you want to ask me or John, either about selling your work online or working in a studio, we'd be happy to make another video to address these things. Anything we can do to help, really. So yeah, just leave us a comment and subscribe if you want to see more of these types of videos. Happy to make them. Thanks so much.